Creekside is a good one. Yeah. All right, here we are, live with Onnit's third podcast. A real honor today with a medical professional that has been one of the most significant individuals in my own personal health, rejuvenation, performance, aptitude, career in my life over the past year out of anybody else. And I think it has a lot to do with your background, where you've come from, all the different realms where you've drawn experience and knowledge, from starting in traditional medicine, well, first being a college athlete, to traditional medicine, down to the jungle, a place that's near and dear to my heart, and then off to more holistic medicine, and now bringing it all together. So excited to introduce you guys to Dr. Dan Engle, and here he is. So if you want to take us through briefly your journey and how you've arrived to become the individual that you are today, and able to draw on that much information and bring it all to bear when helping us with our supplements and giving advice to your patients.
Excellent. Well, it's good to be back in the saddle, as I was saying with you, Aubrey, and back in Austin. And this is a place that's near and dear to my heart because this is where I went to college. And grew up playing sports my whole life. Culminated in playing college soccer here at St. Ed's. Played on the Olympic development team and got a lot of exposure in the sports arena and that kind of sports mindset and that drive. And as we were talking before, like the camaraderie that's built
absolutely
through those kinds of endeavors where you're on the battlefield with your brothers and your sisters, and you've got a common goal and you're driving towards that. And if I knew, a tenth of what I know now back then, my performance would have been escalated astronomically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything from how to eat better to peak performance supplements to how to train more mindfully, how to recover better, as opposed to saying, oh, that hurts, I'm just going to wrap it tighter.
You soccer players don't wrap it tighter. You bring out the magic spray, I've seen you, and you spray it on
That's
yourself.
in the Mexican leagues. No, but it's true. It's like, how do we use, whether it's magic spray or magic ace wraps, to just keep pushing through the pain,
right?
As opposed to saying, wow, that hurts now, and it's going to be a functional injury later if I don't take care of it now.
Yeah.
So a lot of the healing that I've done since cooling down on the competitive sports has been to make up for those functional injuries that I just tried to overlook or play through before. And that's the same, anything from any of the team sports to any of the individual sports on the spectrum of golf to MMA.
Sure.
So how do we mindfully take care of this body temple and use it as a sacred tool to do our mission, our purpose, and also be able to learn how to drive it like a race car.
Yeah, absolutely. Give it the right fuel, the right nutrients.
Yeah.
I mean, man, that would have been a huge asset if I would have developed Shroom Tech and Alpha Brain back in my own playing days as a competitive basketball player. And it's just the tools that we're able to put together and bring to bear now are just getting better. And the performance and how we're doing it is getting smarter, and doing it in a way that's not going to have a blowback, a takeaway to permanent health, like some of the other performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs, that, yeah, sure, it'll give you a boost now, but good luck with your, testosterone production when you're 40, or good luck keeping your joints safe when you're juicing to the max and your muscles are developing way faster than your knee joint, or your elbow, so being able to do things in a smart, sustainable way, I think, is really going to be, the future, and really what Onnit is promoting in general.
Yeah. And being able to spread a good message to a wide population. You've got young athletes who are listening more and more to these kinds of stories and mindful tools for awareness of how to continue their peak performance for years to come. And it's not just a strong burst right at the beginning, because the brighter the candle, the brighter the flame, the quicker the burn time. And so we want to be able to have a bright flame with a long burn time to be able to build in, from a Chinese medicine perspective, it's like building in the genes, by building in the deep reserves for energy, which is essentially what you're doing with Shroom Texsport. The adaptogens help repair the depleted energy stores. Mm-hmm. They get the body ready for action, and then they also help the repair mechanisms bring in that extra energy during your downtime and your recovery time.
Yeah, that was one of the amazing stories when I was doing a lot of the research for the Shroom Texsport is on the cordyceps mushroom. The Chinese Olympic team that was training, the marathon team, they were reportedly running a marathon per day leading up to the training. And that was unheard of. You can't do that, they said. That was the traditional model. But with the cordyceps and some of the other Chinese herbs that they were giving these athletes, they were able to keep their body from breaking down, so get the benefits of that extreme hyper training without completely destroying their athletes, which is why they blew everybody away. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons. So certainly something to keep in mind. But another big piece of that is the nutrition side, just keeping your body fueled properly.
That's probably the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mike Dolce was saying the same thing.
Yep.
And the old medicine docs will say the same thing.
We're talking old medicine docs like Hippocrates,
right. Right.
Your stomach is the cauldron of the hell.
Let food be thy medicine.
Yeah.
And medicine be thy food. And how do we become more and more aware of using those micronutrient and macronutrient balances to be able to increase our peak performance and rely somewhat on supplements to take it to the next level, but
right.
building a solid foundation. And my style is to put myself in the lab. So I went through my medical training and then finished with that a little bit dissatisfied. It wasn't the kind of medicine that I wanted to practice. We're really good as allopaths, as Western docs on the battlefield, in the ER, in the OR. But we're not super good at preventative medicine or looking at the deep root causative factors for chronic disease. Mm-hmm. So that led me into holistic medicine and then eventually rejuvenation medicine. And I, being the type of person that wants to put myself in the laboratory, I was looking at all the healing diets that were around. And I went on an extended, really clean diet as a raw vegan, which was clarifying to my body, but was really weakening to my hormonal system.
Right. It
clarified the terrain, but it didn't strengthen it. It didn't bring in the reserves, the deep reserves. And basically, that's on a survival level. That's mostly the endocrine system of the brain, hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland, and then the adrenal system of the body. Mm-hmm. And when the brain and the body can talk to each other and know how to upregulate the macronutrients that you're giving it that actually feed it and the deep reserves, then you can function at that level of peak performance.
Right.
But over time, being somebody who constitutionally just burns through energy quicker, it's called like a slow oxidizer, a fast oxidizer. It's kind of like metabolism, but it's more like metabolism on the cellular level. No, it's important to be able to feed the ongoing system with enough good quality protein.
Yeah.
And you have to know where you're at and how your body responds to low protein or high protein diets, because a high protein diet's not good for some people.
Yeah.
And
I think
it's
that's
necessary for other people.
I think that's one important factor. It's people kind of ignore their own particular body chemistry, and they say, oh, this diet worked for this person. Arian Foster, he's a vegan. Look at him, he's a monster. That means if I'm a vegan, I can be a monster. Well, maybe not.
Right.
Maybe Arian Foster has the ways to utilize protein. His metabolism allows him to function optimally at that, because of his natural strengths and weaknesses. But people generally ignore that. And I think, your colleagues in Western medicine, the MDs, they kind of have that same mentality to a certain degree either. A person is a person. They don't really look at the individual, what kind of patterns, what kind of nutrition. It's like, oh, this is the problem. This is the drug that the reps have been telling me about that works. I've looked at the research. Good. Boom. Here you go. And that kind of sifts down where you think everybody's the same. Where, we've experienced even with Alpha Brain. There's some really acetylcholine dominant people who have naturally extremely high levels of acetylcholine, who will take Alpha Brain and be like, yeah, it feels kind of cool, I like it, but the effect is minimal. And then we'll have some more acetylcholine deficient people who are like, Alpha Brain changed my world.
The lights have come on.
And most of the people, fall in the middle category. We're like, yeah, it was awesome. I felt great. But there's these extreme sides of people just from their natural neurotransmitter makeup that have either a dramatic movement or it was pretty good. Felt pretty good.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that kind of feedback.
Yeah, we have these constitutional issues, like kind of how we're born. We're born to have a particular body makeup, a particular build. And you'll see the body break down over time when people try and push their performance or their muscle mass beyond where they're constitutionally geared to live. And so pushing their bodies into these degenerative states and doing whatever it takes in order to get there because they see somebody else that they want to emulate.
Yeah.
Like Arian Foster.
Yeah.
As that example, like, I'm going to try that diet, I'm going to try his workout routine,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. That's probably not going to work for a whole lot of people except who's made just like Arian Foster.
Right.
Yeah. So we have to put ourselves in the lab and see if it works. And if it works, great, use it more. And if it doesn't work, great, you learn something, go on, move on, and find out what does work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an easy trap to fall in. I remember I was reading a story about this fighter named John Fitch. And John Fitch is famous for a very low calorie restricted training diet. And he says it helps his cardio and stuff like that. So it's like, well, maybe that's the way to go. And then you start following the rabbit hole down and you see all these benefits of low calorie. But then, I was talking with Mike Dolce, he's worked with hundreds of fighters, top athletes in the way. And I said, what's up with this low calorie thing? He's like, it may work for Fitch, but I try to do that to my other guys. Not only will they not be able to get on weight because their body enters this starvation mode where they're clinging to every fat cell possible because they don't think there's enough food out in the world. He said it'll create a disaster. Their muscles will break down. All kinds of things will happen. So, just because it works for John Fitch isn't proof and case point for everybody else. You gotta flow and work. That said, there are some general principles to abide by. And I think you and Dolce both are big proponents of these earth-grown nutrients, keeping things back to the basics, like we have with our new Hemp Force bars that we just launched. So I know you've had a chance to try kind of in the early development stages. But the idea behind that is every single thing in there is a food. It's a real food.
Yeah. And as such, the body's going to recognize it as being natural, and it's going to uptake it more regularly and more readily. And that's one of the reasons, too, when you're eating good quality whole foods and you're using good quality whole ingredient supplements, you take them together.
Yeah.
Occasionally you won't take some things together because you're going to get better absorption or better utilization by themselves. But generally, taking your supplements with food helps upregulate everything because the body recognizes it as something natural. It's like something that's going to... that there's a resonant field for a healing vibration. I'm going to open myself up to receive that. When that doesn't happen is when you either get no effect from your supplements because they're either synthetic or the body's not recognizing it as food as such, and so you get a suboptimal response, and at that point the person either says, well, that's not a good supplement, or it's not a good supplement for me, or I know it's a good supplement for me, but I'm going to really have to push the dose.
Right.
Because I really have to drive it into the cells and into the body in a receptive mode. And that's essentially what we do as allopaths in Western medicine. We try and synthesize one aspect of a plant known to help with some kind of condition, and we drive that dose at an unnatural state from that plant material.
Sure.
And that leads to the side effects. Yes, it may give you some kind of therapeutic effect.
Give you a sharp reaction, but
but the body's not going to be able to respond to it over time.
Right.
And this effect is known, but it's also this subtle thing that's not really talked about a whole lot.
We've had over time since our history a few 100,000, like almost 200,000 customers who've come through and tried different products. So we've had a really good, and Alpha Brain's been consistent through that. We've had a really good kind of case point example of how things affect different people. And I remember there was one time where our demand was so high for the naturally extracted Huperzia serrata, like a full spectrum Huperzia serrata, which is what we use now, that because of their planting schedule, they weren't able to meet our demand for the full spectrum Huperzia serrata. Now, full spectrum Huperzia serrata has huperzine A, huperzine B, huperzine C, has all three of those, plus all the other alkaloids and everything that's worked together how the plant was supposed to be made. So we had to switch to a purely extracted huperzine A, which they pulled out of the plant and sprayed back on some inert material, still calling it, and we had to call it huperzine A. And the effect had a very sharp effect on people as an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor, but that's when we started getting reports of some people having discomfort. They were, whoa, or that didn't really feel that well. I got a headache, I'm a little nauseous. And we're like, well, what the hell's going on here? We're using the same amount, but the fact that one was stripped of everything else around to support it, the way that the body took it had like a very sharp initial reaction, but then came with some consequences down the road. And that was a good lesson for us to, in every case possible, use the whole plant that we can. Even if it's a concentrated extract, like in some of our adaptogens, it's concentrated, but the whole thing is concentrated. They're not just focused on one marker, they're focused on making everything in that plant more powerful.
Yeah, and oftentimes we don't know what all of these other cofactors do.
Right.
We just know that they're important to the effect.
Yep.
And Mother Nature put them there for a reason.
Yeah.
And they learned how to benefit one another. It's like on a football team. You don't have just the quarterbacks going at each other.
Yeah.
You've got the whole compendium of players and coaches and administrative staff that helps that team, as that team approach, reach their maximal effect. And so we're not going to just strip down like your stars and expect that you're going to have the same effect.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not a balanced approach. And these are balanced whole food ingredients, looking at how the body can restore its optimal state of peak performance and therefore potential.
Yeah.
Like this total human potential that we're getting.
Absolutely. And that's another thing we have with our protein. Some people are used to taking, oh man, bro, my whey protein's got 60 grams of protein in it, bro. Yours only's got like 16 grams. I'm like, just try it. See how your body actually absorbs the compounds in the hemp protein, which is a complete protein as well. But your body takes it in differently. It's a different ball game than 60 grams of whey protein that's going to sit in your gut like a brick.
Right.
16 grams, the edestin, the albumin, the way that the hemp is constructed, your body just soaks that up and fuels your muscles. So a lot less seems to go a lot farther.
Yeah. And you're looking also at like the source, how it's processed, and sourcing quality ingredients that are going to be, as we were talking about before, readily taken up. So it's not just the amount of protein, it's the utilizable protein. The absorbable protein and then the utilizable protein. If it's not absorbable, it's going to sit in your gut, turn into a brick, and that's going to create a whole litany of downstream effects. Gas, discomfort, bloating, looking like the Marshmallow Man. And then once
those bodybuilder farts that we've all unfortunately been subjected to. It's like, Jesus, that huge hulking man has exhaust pipe coming out his ass.
Well, the funny thing too is that's not a whole lot different than some of these raw food meetup groups.
Yeah.
And you've got these really petite kind of healthy looking people with nasty gas. and I was the medical director at one of the premier raw kind of vegan retreat centers, rejuvenation centers down in southern Arizona for a couple of years. And people would consistently come through that program to do fasts and purification programs. And it is a healing diet of sorts. Over time, however, if you're not used to the raw vegan diet, and you're using it as a maintenance diet, and that's all you're doing, and it's really loaded in things like nuts and seeds, because as a fast oxidizer, now that you don't have the other protein sources you're really looking for, maybe you're using some spirulina, maybe some chlorella, maybe some hemp protein or rice protein, etc. But if you're not doing it smartly and you're just relying on some of the basic kind of like salad ingredients, these heavy nut and seed diets have that same kind of effect.
I believe it.
Oh.
I believe it. Yeah, I think that we're omnivores for a reason. We were able to, maybe we didn't always catch meat, but we did, and that was part of our program, part of our diet, developing as hunters, and that's one of the things that I liked about Dolce so much, is that he incorporates everything. He's like, hey, listen, just eat what comes from the earth, eat what's natural, and he's not restricted. I think paleo has a lot of good principles. Veganism, raw veganism certainly has some good principles, but like you said, there's costs to all of these things, and really the solution is the simplest one. What comes from the earth, what's naturally sourced, what's not manipulated, and as close to real food as possible, I think.
And trying it on for size. Seeing how it feels, and that's going to change over time. It's going to change. Our diet's going to change optimally depending on our exercise, depending on our stress levels, depending on the season of the year, depending on our age. There's so many different factors. So staying consistent into one modality, if it's not working, is going down a blind alley, and it's going to end in chronic degenerative conditions and accelerated aging and hormonally being dysregulated and therefore neurochemically dysregulated.
Yeah.
And so when I was raw vegan, I was really sure that was the best healing diet. And it actually is the best healing diet, but it's not the best maintenance diet. And I stayed on it because I wanted to see how long I could put myself into that lab, because some of the books and the literature and the people I was learning from at the time were promoting that as the best longevity diet. And the thing we know about longevity diets is the thing that you mentioned before. The common factor is relative calorie restriction. So that's on the order of a 1,500 to 1,800 or so.
Don't board yourself.
Right.
Chew your food.
Right. Yeah, please. And utilize high quality food, because therefore you don't have to eat more to get the same effect. And to do some periodic fasting.
Yeah.
Don't eat one day a week, or a few days out of the month, or a week out of the year, or something like that.
Allow yourself to cleanse.
That
and if you think back to the older times, there were periods where, hey, you just didn't have food for a little while.
Right.
You're on a hunt, you're on a chase, and that was naturally built in as a kind of restorative process. And then I think another key factor, so after we lay this foundation here, we'll move on to some of the supplements, but another key factor is just being able to listen to your body. And I think that's something that's really, really hard for people. And I consider myself extremely good at that, but even still, I'll catch myself doing things that don't really make sense because my mind is telling me, aha, this is what needs to happen. And you end up making weird decisions that your body's like, what are you doing? Don't do that. I'm telling you it doesn't feel good. And my mind says, but I read somewhere it is, so I'm going to do this for sure. But really listening to your body, but not listening to the cravings, which may seem like your body, like those sugar cravings or alcohol cravings. So it gets complicated. Finding, I guess, your body's real voice, your true voice of what it wants, and then being able to supply that is a challenge, but something that everybody should try and work on.
Yeah. And we're going to try and find the latest research, and try and discern between what's research and what's hype.
Yeah.
And when we do that investigative work, we see that the common factors stay consistent. Eat close to the ground, eat close to nature, and eat as clean as possible. And if that includes meat, then know the source of your meat.
Yep.
Know where it's coming from. Is it organic? Is it grass-fed? Is it mindfully raised? All of that affects the energetic potential and therefore the body's utilizability of that food. So cows raised in farms in some of these horrendous conditions, and you can see that now more readily than we ever could. Like, find some YouTube videos of the crazy conditions that some of the animals are raised in. That's a very different vibration and utilizability than pasture raised.
Yeah.
And organically, sustainably, mindfully treated livestock and animals, etc. That ability to also have an awareness of how we choose to steward relationships with people who are having these sustainable relationships, whether it's growing food or whether it's stewarding food, so to speak, like being the gatekeepers of this animal protein as it's coming back to us. These are all really important decisions to be able to make.
Yep.
And so we're seeing the organic movement move because it's a consumer-driven movement. It's not an industry movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's only an industry movement because the consumers are voting with their dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. Well, let's move on a little bit here. I think, one thing I definitely wanted to touch on was, we were talking last night, and I was expressing that, man, I've been having a bit of trouble sleeping lately. And I was lying down, and I could hear my pulse in my ears sometimes, and I would just stay awake. And that's happened periodically in my life. And I was saying, I was trying some of my normal solutions, and they just weren't working the same. And you mentioned that it was probably an possibly adrenal fatigue and a cortisol response. Mm-hmm. And I'm imagining that this is, quite a common issue in our day and age. And you mentioned a few things that really helped me out last night already, that I saw noticeable effects. I was going to, have you kind of brief our customers on that, because I bet it's an issue that a lot of people could benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea of adrenal health is such a common, necessary discussion because of the way we generally live our lives. We're genetically programmed to have this ability to peak our adrenaline function and our adrenal support when necessary. And ideally, we've got like an up and down effect, the chase and the rest, right? So to be able to functionally turn on that drive, achieve whatever goal that is, and then rest back into a regenerative mode is the ideal level of function, right? We prepare, and then we peak our exercise, and then we recuperate.
And not only exercise, but intensity, stress, all of that.
All of that. Yeah. So the way we live now isn't so much these peaks and valleys, because many of us are living like, domesticated dogs, just like remote controls and behind the desk. And when we can get back into this cycle, we start to see things harmonize and normalize, especially with some adrenal support. But most people live like this, which is a low grade stress level all the time.
Or medium grade stress
level. Or high grade, right. Yeah,
but it's fairly constant until they knock themselves out with a hypnotic, like Ambien or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Or beer and alcohol and that GABA effect. Mm-hmm. Or
smoke themselves into a depressed. I've known more than a few people who feel like, just because I smoke 3 bowls of pot before I go to bed doesn't mean I have a sleeping problem. It's just fun and it helps me sleep. Like, okay, well. Right. You're still medicating.
Totally.
Even though it's a plant, grant you, I got you. But you're still medicating.
And what's it doing to the REM cycle?
Right.
And how is it affecting the body's ability to recuperate? Because that regenerative sleep between 10 and 2 is the most important sleep. And when you look at other longevity factors, sleep actually outweighs, in some studies, outweighs diet, outweighs exercise. When you look at all the factors that lead people to living their longest life and most rejuvenative, happy life, sleep is the number one priority. And that regenerative sleep between 10 and 2 is when the immune system rebuilds itself.
Right.
So, with alcohol, some people get to sleep better, but it screws up their REM cycle.
I know I sleep like shit when I've had some drinks. I mean, just terrible. And I'll wake up after 4 or 5 hours of bad sleep and not be able to sleep. Right. I mean, it's really a nightmare when you're drinking heavily. I mean, a glass of wine or two doesn't seem to affect things, but if you're out on a night where you're going after it, the sleep is atrocious afterwards, and I think that contributes to a good amount of the hangover. I mean, there's a lot of factors, toxicity from the liver, but that's a major factor. Right.
So if the liver is congested, then it's not doing its job in hormonal regulation either. When you look at the longevity hormones and prohormones, glutathione is the big player. Mm-hmm. Most of the glutathione produced in the body is actually produced in the liver, and then it gets transferred to the brain, and then it upregulates neurochemistry, and it helps protect against things like Alzheimer's. And many of the ingredients in alpha brain are upregulating glutathione.
Yep.
So when we're looking at like all of the compendium of experiences that the body goes through in order to help perform at its at its peak function, and all the ways that we try and override the body's warning signs and the yellow lights. When you're driving down the road and you see the yellow light, what do? Do you start to slow down, or do you speed up?
Yeah.
You're right, more coffee. Right, so I'm going to flog my adrenals during the day to get through. I'm tired.
So here's the scenario. I'm tired. Coffee. Oh God, I'm tired again. More coffee.
Yeah.
That's
5-hour energy drinks.
Yeah, that's the solution. It's not, why am I tired as a human being during the day? What is the issue? Now, I'm not saying we obviously sell a great coffee that I enjoy from time to time, but people are using that as a mask instead of a decision like, hey, today I will elevate these things intentionally with this coffee, and this will be fun. This will be my experience for the day. Making that conscious choice rather than masking some larger nagging problems.
Right.
So let's go back to this adrenal. We got a limited amount of time. I want to hit this. Adrenal support. So this is one factor for sleep. We got the whole sleep picture has a lot of factors.
So when you were talking about problem sleeping, the thing that turned me on to the potential that was adrenals for you is you could feel your heart beating.
Right.
You could hear your heart beating as you laid your head down on the pillow. You could feel that the pulse pressure, so to speak, was stronger. And it wasn't your pulse rate so much that was faster, but the pulse pressure was stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a classic sign of adrenal stress. And most people's cortisol, which is an adrenal marker, adrenal hormone, is peaked at night as opposed to being peaked during the day. And it's gotten dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to support the adrenals, what do the adrenals feed on? The adrenals are fed by protein and minerals. Right? Because when the adrenals are stressed, you get minerally depleted. The adrenals can't produce and then regulate the minerals to their fullest extent. And if you're dysregulating minerals even further by doing like way too much coffee, which strips minerals because it's really acidifying.
Right.
And when you're eating a high acid diet, the body's got to go pull from the bones the minerals necessary to buffer that acidity and try and put it into a more alkaline state. So there is another mineral depleting ongoing exercise that most people are doing. So you actually feed the adrenals by giving the body the minerals so it doesn't have to work as hard, and then there's this kind of recuperative mechanism that can settle and rest.
The solution for the minerals was right there in my pantry. It was the Himalayan salt that we sell.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I take Himalayan salt, but I take it, as I mentioned, kind of haphazardly as something, okay, I'll make sure I remember to do this 3 times a week or something like that, where I take a good amount. So I took a shot glass, poured in, maybe a gram or 2 of the Himalayan salt, drank that down, and I had one of the best night's sleep I'd had in maybe weeks. Maybe weeks. Something that simple. I couldn't believe that was it, but I just fell asleep and I stayed asleep. And when I went up to go pee in the middle of the night, my heart rate wasn't so, that was another problem too. I could still feel my pulse, but I was calm and easy. Went right back down to sleep. Got 9 hours last night. It was awesome. And it was something really simple, So it's funny, people, you want to think, even for me, I was thinking, God, maybe I have a real sleeping problem. Because we have some cool sleeping stuff. The New Mood helps. The melatonin, obviously, is that sleep-triggering hormone. But that stuff just wasn't cutting it anymore. And I was like, maybe I have something, really serious that I need. I was planning to talk to you because I trust your medical opinion more than anything. But something really simple.
And the adrenals are so vital to health and vitality in the body. And when some people are feeling low vitality or low mood or low energy, they may want to turn to something like T+, because they see the athletic performance potential, because they know who's using it, they've heard the accounts, they see the people on TV and doing these great exercise routines that they want to be able to do, so they turn to something like T+, which is great. T+ is an excellent formula to help support natural testosterone levels. And if you're not addressing the adrenal glands, all of the testosterone that you're starting to build up, that energy will get shunted from the sex hormones back into the adrenal glands, because the hormonal...
That's the bleeding wound.
Yeah.
That's what your body's going to have to try and deal with.
And for survival, the adrenals are necessary. The sex hormones aren't necessarily a primary requirement for survival.
Yeah.
Right? It's necessary for longevity and like vitality, but not necessarily survival. Right? So you gotta address the adrenal support first. And what do you do that? So good minerals, good protein sources, and adaptogens.
Mm-hmm. And that was another thing you mentioned too, is the Shroom Texsport. We think about it as this pre-workout formula that's awesome and gives you that effect, allows you to go longer, allows you to feel energized without feeling jittery and that kind of stimulant effect. But you mentioned how the adaptogens actually support your adrenal glands rather than stressing them. So on one side you have Jack 3D, boost your face off, ripped, fuel, extreme, 9, whatever they name these things nowadays that people take. I always get these questions. What do you think of ripped dinosaur max, fuel to the 10th power cubed? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure it's terrible.
Sounds like a lot of hype.
Yeah, like I'm sure it's going to give you a big caffeine rush, but it's not going to do it. And I get those questions all the time. So you have that on one side, and then you have Shroom Texsport, ATP energy cycle, oxygen utilization. And while it has a little bit of green tea, it's also packed with adaptogens that are going to support your adrenal gland rather than, Dinosaur Max Extreme, which is going to
deplete them. Significant.
So it's really kind of the opposite, same effect. One's a lot cleaner, but one's has a sustainably better health benefit.
Totally. Yeah. So that's when we get to that opportunity to burn a bright flame,
right,
and keep it, as opposed to just burning a bright flame and it going out because we can't sustain it. We've depleted that level of reserve and resource.
So let's talk about T+, because we got probably another 5-10 minutes here. So let's talk about T+. We get a lot of questions. First of all, is it going to affect my long-term testosterone production? And is it okay for me to use this as a tweak, kind of a biohack, as the popular word would be, to boost testosterone and performance for a while, even if I'm a generally healthy individual? Those are the questions we get. Basically, is it gonna screw something up? And I think talking to you has been a key part in even making this formula and feeling comfortable in marketing it.
Mm-hmm. So we've taken care of the adrenal issue, right? That's
right.
Like ground level. We've taken care of nutrition, and then we look at neuroendocrine optimization. We look at what's happening in the brain and what's happening in the hormonal system. And those two are going to work hand in hand, just like salt and pepper, peas and carrots, chocolate and peanut butter.
Peas and carrots. Are they really good together?
Yeah, they're totally good together.
I'll take your word for it, Dr. Dale.
So the endocrine system, it really starts in the brain, right? This HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, the brain's going to be able to upregulate the hormonal potentiation in the body. Mm-hmm. The brain has to be on for that to happen. Once the brain's on and the adrenals are on, then you can really feed the sex hormones, i.e. you can really boost testosterone. If you have the brain off and the adrenals off, you can keep flooding as much testosterone support as you want, but it's going to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
It may bump up a little bit, but it's not really going to potentize. It's not going to really optimize. So when you have that foundation set, then you bring in something like T+, which is a natural testosterone support. And it's building endogenous testosterone production. It's building someone's own personal testosterone production. It's not like taking exogenous or extra testosterone hormone. If you're taking extra testosterone hormone, which is what a lot of these like anti-aging docs are doing in some of these anti-aging clinics, and you've got a guy on the golf course who's got a young, this is a really big stereotype, and I apologize if I offend anybody. You got some guy on the golf course who's got a trophy wife and he wants to be able to perform, so he goes into his docs and says, I don't have that same performance, I don't have the same virility, and doc says, okay, here's testosterone.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, that person recognizes the benefit, but what's happening long term is
lifelong prescription to testosterone.
Exactly. Now you're hooked because your body's stopped producing its own, and the only choice you have is now to take stuff from the outside.
Whereas the T+ is operating on the converse mechanism.
Right. Yeah. The T+ is going to build up someone's own support inside, and it's going to help regulate the testosterone to estrogen balance. Most men are becoming more and more and more estrogen dominant. And that's because of pollutants, what are called xenoestrogens, or these xenobiotic foreign to life influences through pollutants, and that's pesticides and herbicides and chemicides and all of the infections and everything from something like soy.
Yep.
Soy is highly estrogenic.
Yep.
And that's in a lot of these protein formulas that, like, you know, people who are trying to gain weight and optimize their function are turning to. But that's actually turning the balance in the other direction. Right? So you want something that's
got to go straight, all-American, man-made hemp. Maybe it's woman-made, I don't know.
Right.
Just for the example.
Totally.
Good.
And so there you have that kind of rebalancing. So you're boosting testosterone, and you're also helping to support its optimization and maintenance.
Yeah.
As opposed to, because the body's skillful, and it's going to say, okay, for a while maybe I've been a little bit low, or maybe even estrogen dominant. Now I'm supporting testosterone. The body's going to say, okay, well, what's happening now? How do we regulate where we were at? And so you may start to increase testosterone, but if it's still leaking over to estrogen, you're losing some of that effect.
Right.
So that, and with T+, you've got this estrogen blockage effect, so to speak, or this prevention of the conversion from testosterone back into estrogen.
Yeah, which is an important factor, and which is what you see when people have done that wrong. You know, you'll see what the common term being bitch tits, you know, and you'll be able to look at the fatty deposits in some big beefcake's nipples and be like, yeah, you didn't quite do that one right, buddy. You know,
that was a strike.
Yeah, because that shouldn't be the case,
right.
You know. So, and you also get other effects too. There's other different things, baldness and other kind of weird hormonal changes that people are concerned about, which is just the problem of not having the right natural regulators in your testosterone boost.
And then everything from looking at like the T+ formula, which is a great supplement to help boost natural testosterone. Looking at, okay, food, we talked about protein, exercise, obviously weight-bearing exercise helps boost testosterone production more than just cardio. Yeah. And then supplementation, like with T+ and other, the broad spectrum plant quality supportive nutrients in T+. It's not just one single ingredient. And you also have to look at the things that are negatively affecting testosterone and that are really limiting the optimal vitality. And it's things that you might not necessarily see right off the bat, like EMF radiation, electromagnetic radiation. The studies show that if you're on a laptop computer and you've got your laptop right on your lap, and that EMF radiation is nuking your gonads, that's going to affect your testosterone
level. What if your laptop is on your lap and you're milking your gonads while they're getting nuked? Does it neutralize it, Dr. Dan?
You like to think so, right?
Everybody, we're going to have to change everything. Everything must change now.
Take your laptop off your lap, please.
We're going to have to go back to DVDs. My goodness.
And you see that in the lab. Yeah. Laptops on the lab, nuking the gonads changes sperm count, lower sperm count, lower sperm morphology. So you don't have enough sperm, and the sperm you have are all kind of like gunked up and strangely shaped, and don't move, so they're lazy, right? It changes sperm.
Sounds like birth control, Dr.
Right. It's really this kind of like consistent causative factor of so many hormonal dysregulations, including sleep, and that's why a lot of people sleep so crappy. It's because they're just bombarded by all this.
So what do you do? Radiation. Get out in the swimming pool.
Get out in the swimming pool. Get your bare feet on the ground. Start doing some of these exercises and like these peak performance routines with your bare feet on the ground.
Grab a kettlebell. Go to the park.
Right.
So get out. Get your battle rope. Wrap it around a tree. You know.
Back to nature.
Go swimming. Back to nature.
Totally.
That's important. Well, Dr. Dan, I have a few things to catch up with people on. We got an exciting new Lucid Dreams page and contest talking about the enhanced dream experience from the Alpha Brain. I don't even know if you've seen it yet. It's a pretty cool page. But onnit.com/lucid-dreaming. Check it out. We got a contest where you submit any kind of crazy lucid dream you've had during the Alpha Brain experience, and we will select the masterful dream artist to have his dream illustrated professionally, your supply of Alpha Brain. So that's cool. Hope you guys check that out. And then today only, in honor of you, sir, Dr. Dan Engle, we have 12% off Alpha Brain with code. Now, you should have made those either O's or zeros there. I'm thinking it's OP410. OP410 is the code for any of you listening. Thank you for tuning in. And we just launched our Hemp Force bars. Sneak preview. Next week, we have these really awesome weight vests from Hyperwear we're going to launch. And then the week after that, finally, we get our vitamin packs out, which are going to have a real kind of really allow you to set your supplementation foundation. Krill oil, natural supplements, vitamin C, spirulina, chlorella, a lot of our heavy hitters all in a pack, day pack and night pack. So that's coming up. A lot of cool shit going on. And thanks for coming out. Dr. Dan Engle, everybody. I really appreciate having you.
Yes, indeed. Look forward to the next time.
All right. Likewise.
See you.